Testing, testing. Okay. Hello. Can everybody hear me? All right. Well, welcome to Show and Tell how Microsoft uses Power Automate to empower its own employees to do more. My name is Keith Canan. I'm a software engineering manager on the Microsoft Power Automate team, and we're excited to show you just some of the ways Microsoft uses Power Automate, and hopefully you'll be able to apply it to your business as well. As you know, I just wanted to hit some of the key high points of what Power Automate is in like just a 1-minute overview. So Microsoft Flow is now known as Microsoft Power Automate. I'm sure you've heard this all week, but I just wanted to remind everybody that it's because Flow is now a part of the Power Platform, and it's along with Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agents. It's a low-code, no-code platform that spans Office 365, Azure, Dynamics 365, and applications to basically empower your business. The key thing about Power Automate is automation at scale. Allows everybody in your organization to automate workflows and tedious repetitive tasks and manual time-consuming tasks to accelerate productivity. And as a reminder, it's designed for everybody. It's not just for developers, it's for IT professionals, administrators, experienced developers, but also end users that can focus on the business. So with that, there's also 275 plus app connectors. A lot of those are like Office connectors, but you can connect to existing and first-party and third-party services, which including things like Twitter and other services on the internet. But these connectors enable you to build these automated flows without having to write code. And so with that, I wanted to talk about a few of the case studies inside of Microsoft. Inside of Microsoft, we literally have hundreds and thousands of people using Microsoft Flow. Flow is within Microsoft Power Automate. And I'm going to talk a little bit today about what Microsoft Finance is doing today with Power Automate, what the legal department is doing with Microsoft Power Automate, and what our own team, the Power Automate team, is doing with Power Automate. And we're also going to talk a little bit about what Microsoft Core Service Engineering and Operations is doing. So let's first talk about the finance department and how they're using it. So the Microsoft Finance periodically every quarter. They receive data on updates to tax laws around the world, and they need to form quarterly regulatory reports and tax reports based on regions. And some of this data comes from external sources and third parties via email. Like an example, some of them comes in Excel attachments from other companies into Microsoft. And there's also data sources inside of Microsoft on SharePoint that the finance department uses. And so before they were using Power Automate, this was like a manual, tedious process. There'd be multiple emails coming in with Excel attachments. These data needs to be merged and handcrafted. Different financial analysts who specialize in different regions would need to pull that data and organize it by country and handcraft these reports. And what was this? What's the solution to use Power Automate? Well, they're using Power Automate combined with Power BI and Power Apps. They're using the Outlook connector, the Office 365 Outlook connector to process emails, the Excel connector to read data from spreadsheets. They're using the SharePoint connector to save the data into SharePoint lists and to save the actual Excel documents. And then they push the data into Power BI with the Power BI connector, and they use Power Apps as well so that financial analysts can update records. So let's look at an example flow within Microsoft Power Automate. So at the very top, it's kind of hard to see probably for the audience, but there's different. I can probably pull it up here. As most of you know, Microsoft Flow has a bunch of triggers. Oops, let me switch out of presentation mode. There we go. So Microsoft Flow has Microsoft Power Automate has a bunch of triggers where you can, which are events which can start your automation. And one of them is when an email has arrived. And when you go to, here's an example of flow used by the finance department. When a new email arrives in their inbox, they can basically have differing conditions on it, such as looking at subject, who it's from, different types, figure out what kind of attachments are on it. And when each mail arrives, they can basically look at the attachments and say, oh, okay, these are Excel spreadsheets. They can analyze the data, and if it is what they're looking for, they can then use the SharePoint connector to create a file, and they can then parse the data using the Excel connector. And once they parse that data, they want to create a SharePoint list and with the data row formatted the way they want it, and then they also push it to Power BI. So as you can see, with Power Automate, they're able to do all this. Financial analysts created this without having to write any code. Let me go back to the presentation. And the end result is they built a monitor and inform dashboard, which is pretty much one single view of data aggregated from all the different sources. At the top, it has all the regulatory updates. In the middle, it talks about the different review of the cases. If Microsoft needs to do something in response to tax law changes, each financial agent can actually select at the very top the country or region, and all the data is there. And this is a Power BI dashboard with an embedded Power App on the right. The Power App on the right lets financial analysts make comments which are updated back into the data set. And so the end result is, here's a quote from a senior finance manager at Microsoft. The combination of Flow, SharePoint, and Power Apps allows me to solve complex business processes and produce timely, compliant reporting that impacts a global user community of over 500 people. These tools empower non-programmers like me to explore process automation possibilities that would have required substantial engineering effort previously. So that pretty much sums up how they're using it. Let's look at another case of Microsoft Legal Department. So one thing the Microsoft Legal Department, everybody knows the legal field, there's tons of documents, emails, and it's highly complicated. Certain partner law firms that represent Microsoft, they also, when they want to represent other clients, they need to submit waiver forms to Microsoft and to the client to basically make sure there's no conflict of interest. To basically, like, if that law firm represents a customer, they want to make sure that they're not getting special benefits and vice versa. So there's waiver forms so that it's all fully disclosed and public information. So it's very tedious handling this because they have Microsoft's outside law firm they're working with might have hundreds or thousands of partners also, and they need to notify Microsoft every time. So these are tons of emails coming in, and right now, it was a manual process involving multiple attorneys, a lot of emails going back and forth. There's also data quality inconsistencies. Every single submission contained different details, different formats. Each attorney would basically enter data also differently, so it's kind of hard to organize. So if someone was absent or was not checking their email, the data didn't get tracked. So it was kind of a tough situation. So how do you make this better? So what they did was they used Power Automate with the Office 365 connector to process emails. They used the Forms connector. So Microsoft Forms lets you, when an email will get sent with a link to a form, the outside partner law firm can then input responses to questions in a standard format, and that will get submitted back. The data is then stored in the SharePoint connector, and then those two icons in the middle, they use the Lewis connector for natural language processing to try to understand requests, and then they use the Q&A connector to create hashtags. So the lawyers essentially created a command system where you could reply based on email. I'll show you that in a second. It's pretty complicated, but it's pretty impressive what they built. And they also use the Word connector to create a response document to approve or reject the waiver form. And they also use Power BI to basically show the process to understand the reports and status of all these requests. Now this is complicated, but this is the actual screenshot of one of the flow the legal team's using, which I don't know, I think it's pretty crazy. But I mean, it's exciting to see like, hey, this shows that Power Automate scales. And basically it's the number of operation and conditions they have. Each one of these boxes, if you use a Power Automate 4, can expand, and they have complex logic. So yeah, the legal team sent me this, and I thought it was impressive, so I took a screenshot. This, believe it or not, is a reduced version of that, but it's still pretty complicated. I don't plan to go into all detail, but what I wanted to say was that the lawyers, I mentioned that they use Microsoft Forms. So when an email arrives, Microsoft Forms will have a link. There'll be a link in the email to Microsoft Forms, which is generated by the Power Automate flow, and the partner law firm answers these questions, hits submit. When that data is submitted back, it goes into SharePoint. The crazy thing is up here, when a new email arrives, they have a tag extraction service and a tag cleaning service. And that's what they're using the Lewis and the Q&A connectors for. And they actually created like a command processor. So they're essentially using a state machine, and they have a big switch here trying to process tags from the email. So when a lawyer gets an email after the form is submitted, they can accept it by doing #accept. Or let's say someone's out of office, you can do a #reassign to John. And the actual email gets processed, gets read back into Flow, Power Automate, or the flow within inside Power Automate, and they do the language extraction, and they're able to do these commands. And when a request is approved or rejected at the end, yeah, they end up generating the Word document, as I mentioned before, and it goes back. So that kind of summarizes what they're doing. I wanted to just point out, like, I'm not going to go into huge details about Lewis, but the Lewis is the language understanding part of the Azure Cognitive Services Toolkit, and there is a connector there. And basically, when you have data coming in, like someone says, I want to reassign this to John, that can be formatted where it means, like, reassign John. So it basically standardizes the grammar and understands, and so new commands can be created over time. But they're using that, and they pretty much have a standard language set. And that's just a screenshot saying, yeah, you can use Lewis directly from Power Automate. And then they use Q&A Maker to, once they understand the tags, they want to generate a formatted tag response. And so they'll use the Q&A Maker to do that, to clean up the tags into the final standardized format. And at the end, what have they gained? So they gained 25% efficiency of an employee's time. So there used to be one employee who spent 25% of his time, all he was doing data quality issues. And the data quality improved for multiple reasons. One, they use Microsoft Forms, which has standardized fields so that the partner law firms can enter data in a standard format. The other way was through using Lewis and Q&A to standardize the grammar, because different lawyers would say, oh, I approve this, or in different ways. But now each attorney is also more efficient in understanding the process and what needs to be done, and they've actually gotten really good at it, where now the attorneys just reply and they actually use the hashtags. They don't need to use they basically have learned their own system, and it's pretty cool what they've done. And they like using the email system. I mean, yeah, you could build a Power App that probably does this, but yeah, they love just replying to the emails and doing it, and it's pretty efficient. And end-to-end, it's faster results when the request comes in and goes back to the partner law firm. So that's one way they did it. Now I'll talk about how our team, I'm on the Power Automate team, and how we use it. We use our own product a lot, but I wanted to talk a little bit how one way that we use very much. So one is with customer support investigations. So when a customer support ticket comes in, sometimes the support agent needs help. They need help from the engineering team to figure out, hey, what is going on? Like, why is this thing not working? It's not what's expected. So investigations involve running multiple manual diagnostic queries. And oftentimes the case details are coming from different agents. There's sometimes, Power Automate is used all across Microsoft. So sometimes, support may be a different format in Office than it is in, coming from the Azure team. And different agents are different, and the customer also writes text in a different way. So it's unstructured text. It's sometimes difficult to understand the issue. And then gathering the data manually can take an engineer 1 to 2 hours per case, actually, because there's so many different systems you need to get the data from. So what did we build? So we have our own incident management system that we call ICM, and we have an ICM connector inside of Power Automate, and that when a case is created and assigned to engineering, the Power Automate flow kicks in, and the connector has a trigger on it and says, okay, this ticket's been assigned. It's going to use a regular expression to parse the case details in the case, and it's a website, and it basically reads the data in there, and it actually issues up to 10 or 20 queries in parallel to the Azure Log Analytics connector. And the Azure Log Analytics connector will collect the data, format it, and we paste it. We use the ICM connector to write it back in the ticket. So essentially, the data is written to the ticket immediately, and the data is usually around like the triggers, how many runs that flow has had, how many failures, what connectors are used, and the diagnostic info is all there. And this is a screenshot. I've kind of blurred some things out because there's some IDs and stuff in there, but you can see here that all this data in the middle here is formatted data. That is generated by Power Automate and immediately in the ticket after it's created. And what are the benefits of this? Well, I mentioned it's going to save 1 to 2 hours per support case. And so if an engineer is looking at a couple of support cases, if they're on call that week, that's multiple, tens of hours a week. The time to triage cases is faster also because the diagnostic data is immediately there. So engineers or support agents that want to figure out what the problem is, the diagnostic data often has the error or message right there. And so a lot of times the agent is able to immediately solve the problem without having to talk to engineering. And it's also, this allows the support case, when you have follow-up reviews on the different cases, all the diagnostic data is there instead of being in email systems or engineers communicate differently. The ICM is the source of truth, the case. Now, another case I want to talk about is the Microsoft Core Services Engineering and Operations. So this team is responsible for revenue processing for our volume licensing across all of Microsoft, and it's a huge scale. They essentially have, there's 14 internal business units inside of Microsoft. I mean, you got Xbox, Microsoft Supply Chain, advertising, all these different groups report revenue, and there's 3,800 agents in this organization that are basically reviewing purchase orders and entering data. Doing data entry into websites to report revenue, and this group processes $100 billion plus revenue a year, 2.5 million transactions per year, and this involves 18 million emails per year. So it's pretty huge. I mean, this is for all of Microsoft, and there's a lot of manual steps in this process. So what did they do to leverage the Power Platform? Well, what they did was they used Power Automate for the digital process orchestration. So they have a lot of processes that they already had inside of the IT department that actually already, workflows and stuff like that. So, but they needed to orchestrate them all, so they used Power Automate for that. For all the invoices coming in, they needed to use AI Builder, the OCR for the data capture. So as forms come in, they can actually use the machine learning of AI Builder, understand the forms, and get the data out. But then once the data was out of all these purchase orders, they literally, like I said, they had manual data entry in a website, and that website didn't have APIs. It's an internal volume licensing website. And so they decided to use UI flows. And as you know, like we reported earlier this week, UI flows is the new addition to Power Automate that we added this week, which allows you to automate things without APIs, which includes legacy applications plus web. And this is a screenshot of the the actual Power Automate flow that this group is using. And inside of here, there's UI flows just in their current workflow. And they actually created UI flows for multiple operations, including logging, parsing, and flows for all that. But they created UI flows for every data entry scenario. And the actual process is they have a business process flow for the state of the process. They have a Power App to actually trigger the process. So the Power App is kind of the management place where they can see everything that needs to be done with data that's coming in. And what happens is a user I'll go ahead and jump here. The user actually runs this Power App, and when they're ready for data entry, instead of them actually just looking at the form and typing it in like they used to, they actually click on this Trigger Data Entry button, and it actually runs the UI flow on their desktop right there. So the agent's watching the app come up, and it's going to start automating it. So all the data is already understood because it was extracted from AI Builder. And it then signs the user in, and then it literally is typing as they go, as they watch. And they're actually looking at the screen, verifying it, and they don't need to type in and do anything anymore. The end benefit of all of this, so the order processing part, they got a time savings of 36%. And since they were using AI Builder, they have 70% of their validation rules are now automated, so the quality is improved. Validation rules are automated, so the quality improved by 70%. And by using the UI flow automation, they saved 71% of time. It was just much faster, and the savings projected over the next 2 to 3 years is projected to be 25 to 30 million. So with that, I wanted to show just how you too can get involved in the Power App community. Power Automate community. There's a community forums out there. There's a Power Automate blog which has more information. There's tutorials about Power Automate, and you can go to a YouTube channel and watch videos on how to get started. There's a series out there, and there's also a link to the roadmap on the website. And these slides will be available later if you don't get the links, and you can click on the links in there. And we're also in the booth over there, so if you have a lot of detailed questions, there's a Power Automate booth over there, and the rest of the Power platforms over there as well in the hub, and you can see more information. And with that, I just hope that you see that Power Automate can do web, desktop, API automation, and Microsoft is using its own products with low-code, no-code solutions to improve efficiency and improve costs. So with that, that's all I have. I think I'm over time, so if you have any questions, I can be over here, but thank you. Thanks.